impression I was going to just interview Jared. I didn't realize I was going to present him the award. But fortuitously, I come equipped with a vast stock of dinner anecdotes and stories. So this is about the von Braun Award, which is for management and leadership. And everybody knows about Mr. Isaacman, and I'm going to interview him, and we're going to find out all about his life, except whatever happened recently. And so I thought it would be appropriate to put some context around around his achievements by talking a little bit about von Braun. So there are two particular von Braun stories I'd like to tell. One is that I've actually shook von Braun's hand. When I was a little kid, like 12 years old, my mother took me to a space lecture in Saginaw, Michigan, where I grew up. And von Braun gave a talk. Now, I honestly don't remember a thing about what von Braun said, but it was very inspirational. And I came up and he shook my hand, and I was profoundly impacted by it. And I think I became interested in engineering and in management and space, in large part because of that experience. The other thing I'd like to say, and this will help to put some context around Jared's achievements, which are vast, is that von Braun was possibly the greatest engineering manager of the 20th century. And his achievements are not fully appreciated. The story about von Braun that I like the best is that this was in the early days when they were building the Saturn V. And there were two stages, and von Braun, I guess, was responsible for the second stage, and actually it was the first. He was working on the first stage with the F1 engines, and somebody else was working on the second stage. And they were being done at different NASA sites. And by the way, if any details of the story are false, don't blame me, my memory's faulty. But it's spiritually true. So the other manager came to him, and they kind of gave him a tour of Marshall, and they showed him the F1 engines and all that. And he says, von Braun, this rocket, it's a lot bigger than the official NASA HQ plan. I'd say it's 2 or maybe even 4 times bigger than it's supposed to be. And von Braun said, well, yeah, that's true, because the people in headquarters have no idea what they're doing. So it has to be much bigger. So what you need to do is you need to go back and you build it 4 times bigger. And we'll get to the moon that way. What von Braun didn't say is later on, when the NASA headquarters discovered it was too small, he asked for $4 or $5 billion extra to make it bigger, but it was already bigger. So he used the money for other things. But that's why he was the greatest engineering manager in the 20th century. Anyway, sure or not, I would like to invite Jared Isaacman to come up here. I assume you want to hear him say something, but I would just like to say, I met him 2 years ago, and it was a tremendous experience. He is a true hero. We're going to get into some of his achievements when I talk to him, but all I can say is congratulations.
Well, I think I'm with you for, the next 15 or 20 minutes. So you can hear me speak plenty. This just specific to this honor, incredibly grateful. I will say, it does say right on the front, this is for the Polaris team, which is an enormous team. I mean, geez, you have a dozen people or so that were working directly on the mission. You have 14,000 people at SpaceX that all came together to put that program together. And even though it took 2.5 years and it was a little bit later than we initially anticipated, we got an awful lot done on that. Max performed the vehicle when really high, which came with its own set of challenges in a high radiation environment, micrometeor and orbital debris. We had high energy deorbits. We built a new spacesuit, tested that for a very long time. new form of communication. It's a whole other team and a whole other factory working on Starlink capabilities. Not to mention NASA played a huge role in that mission. I mean, Johnson Space Center multiple times. We did our whole pre-breathe, which was a novel pre-breathe protocol. We did in their 20-foot chamber. Then we came back, tested our suits in Chamber B in their thermovac chamber. Not to mention KSC resources. And we wouldn't have even been able to work on any of that if it wasn't really for the foresight of NASA and everybody who lobbied for there to be this whole commercial human spaceflight thing. So it says team on the front, got to underscore it and exclamation point, because a lot of people contributed for what was a really cool mission. I know there's going to be a bunch more to follow too. So thank you.
So without further ado, and given the limited time, I grew up in New Jersey. I live in New Jersey. I grew up in Michigan, but I've lived since the 80s in New Jersey. You grew up in New Jersey, and I know New Jersey often has a bad reputation. So what happened in New Jersey that propelled you on your path to the stars? I mean, tell us about it.
I mean, I think it was The Sopranos that gave New Jersey that reputation. I mean, it only showed certain parts, and for those that fly through Newark Airport might only get one impression. And really, it's a beautiful state. I mean, lots of deer, forest. I grew up right next to. I lived my last stop in New Jersey. I was next to a cornfield. Great. So New Jersey's great. I do like Pennsylvania a touch better now. And in terms of this, what sparked the interest, I don't know if that had anything to do with the state, and much more to do with my parents. They skimped out on a babysitter and just put me in front of the television set as a kid. So, 5 years old, you're watching it was like Top Gun, The Right Stuff, and Space Camp, the movie. And just watching it over and over again, I was like, I got to do something in line with this. And I thought, look, it'd be aviation. I mean, even when I went to Space Camp, it was Aviation Challenge, because I thought that was going to be as good as it was going to get. And flying is awesome, but obviously got luckier thereafter.
Well, another example of the profound influence of Space Camp. We're good partners with them. So. We have a great relationship with the National Space Society, with Embry-Riddle University. I personally have had wonderful experiences in DC working with Embry-Riddle students during March Storm. You attended Embry-Riddle. So what led you to go to Embry-Riddle, and what was that experience like for you?
Sure. So I left high school at 16 to start a company, and this is, to be very clear, I totally believe in the well-paved road of higher education. I got very lucky early on leaving school like that, but I did want to go back and get my degree. And actually what pushed me in that direction was in 2010, 2011, I was flying air shows. I was part of an air show team, and a lot of the other pilots on that were Air Force, Navy. In fact, some of them came right off the Thunderbirds, so really extraordinary. And they told me, you can actually serve and fly these kind of jets part-time in the Guard or the Reserve. I was like, I no idea that this existed. If I stayed in high school long enough for the recruiters to come around, maybe I would have learned that earlier on. And so I was like, I absolutely want to do this. And I went right to Embry-Riddle because it's an aviation school. And what a great school. This could tie into some whole other tangent I could go on about schools making big investments to really serve as a point of difference from other schools and attract talent that are interested in particular fields. And that's exactly what they've done with their aviation assets and their whole mission control or air traffic control setup that they've built there. They've really done an awesome job. So that's where I went. It was the subject matter of great interest, and certainly a big ERAU fan.
You as an entrepreneur, a serial entrepreneur, you're most associated with Shift 4 Payments and DRAC and International. Now, as you might have guessed from the fact we just gave out the Rock Bottom Awards, there's some young entrepreneurs in here who want to have, some kind of new, amazing companies. And I guess my question to you would be, what's your advice to budding entrepreneurs, young or older, that want to start an amazing company?
Sure. Well, first, I really did just start 2 companies, so I don't know if I've crossed the serial threshold on that, but that actually goes to a little bit of the advice. When you do, it is very hard. It's hard as hell to build a business and get past the first year survival period. So when you do, you tend to want to concentrate all your resources and energy in order to get it right, because again, the odds can be very, very much stacked against you. And also I advise, like, especially for the young folks out there, just did that awesome space station presentation, which was super cool. Congratulations again on it. Is do that kind of thing when you are young, especially if you're going into any entrepreneurial endeavors, when you don't have really too many other responsibilities in life, because it makes it that much easier to concentrate your time and energy. But look, it starts with opportunity. There is a problem that you are able to solve, or an improvement to an existing solution. That's your kind of first step in that journey, and then you got to build a business plan to support it, because there could be a solution to a problem or an improvement, but it's just not economically viable. So, you put together a good business plan behind it, which is going to be a component of raising capital if it is capital intense. And this is the most important part: is bring people that you trust in, friends, mentors, and have them shred your idea. Like, better to get it if it's a bad idea or it's got flaws in it, figure it out now before you're raising capital or hiring people into it, and then take that feedback. And if there is room for adjustments, then you can go out and start the endeavor. And once you do, again, there's no greater priority in life until you get it going.
Thank you. So, among your many accolades, you're the holder of the world record for circumnavigating the globe in a light jet. I believe you achieved that in 2009. So what led you to set your sights on that as a goal, and how did you go about achieving it?
Well, for starters, it seemed like a fun thing to do. And the slightly more technical nuance to it, when I started flying, it was at the tail end of the steam gauge world, and EFIS and glass cockpits were coming together. So, which for any pilots in the room know that, man, that simplifies life in a big way. Now, ForeFlight and iPads do, is the next leap. But the idea that it could dramatically simplify flight planning, and if you do around the world records, every bit of time that you're on the ground counts against you. So it was like, surely this information coming together could enable you to do these things faster, even while you're in the air. And it worked. We wound up beating the record by 23 hours. And even, it's fun, it's challenging, it tests this new technology out. But any of these adventures that I've been lucky enough to be on have to serve a bigger purpose. So a lot of people are probably familiar with the space-related endeavors. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital was a huge part of that. Program. Well, that around the world flight going back in 2008 and 2009 was Make-A-Wish Foundation.
So now that you've opened that door there, so you've gone on 2 flights into space, Inspiration 4 and Polaris Dawn. So how would you compare those 2 experiences?
Shout out to my crew member here, Cyan Proctor.
I'm going to hold you to it. You got to compare the missions.
They were both incredible. Look, similarities between the two. I think in both cases, the time spent on the ground preparing to go on the mission was just as good as going into space itself. Both times was blessed with an incredibly extraordinary crew. It was, and 2 very different sets of objectives. The first one, Inspiration 4, was right in its name, inspiration. I mean, we wanted to assemble a very inspiring crew. We wanted to, show that we could, accomplish big things in space, sure, to get people excited about the future, but also balance out some of the real problems that exist here on Earth today that have nothing to do with going to space, like raising money to defeat childhood cancer. And we did know that if Inspiration 4 went well, the first, true human commercial mission to space, civilian mission to space, there'd be a lot of other exciting missions to follow, and that's where, essentially where Polaris came in. Sure, there's an inspirational element to every human spaceflight mission, and it played a part in that too, but it was more developmental in nature, building new spacesuits, so when we do get to the moon or Mars, we can get out and explore and discover and repair things. And we had to test all sorts of new things, new communication methods with laser links, with Sarah's incredible flash mob orchestra performance from space, different science and research experiments, so it was a little different in that regard.
So, there is a difference between them. I mean, you did test various things on each flight, but in the Polaris Dawn, you and Sarah Gillis became the first civilians, I guess you could say, to walk, to actually do, I guess, technically a tethered spacewalk. But an incredible achievement, and I think anybody who's seen those pictures is like, wow, look at that. So, what did it feel like?
I'd say similar to the mission itself, the journey leading up to launch with respect to suit development was just as good as doing it itself. Maybe that's a lie. It was pretty good to do it. It was so cool to see SpaceX start. I mean, the actual start of the journey was I put on my Inspiration 4 IVA suit and we pressed it up, and that was the baseline of, okay, you really can't do anything with this. And really, you can't. I mean, if you're actually in that situation, it's an emergency. You either have a toxic environment in the capsule or fire or major depressurization, and really you need to be able to hit a couple buttons, and that's it, versus actually being able to work, to operate in that suit and do things, to interact with a camera or a tool or something. So that's quite a journey. And every week we'd come out and they'd make a change, new rotators in the shoulders, new stitching, new gloves. And then the next week, you come back on Monday and the suit now we've changed something on the right shoulder versus the left. And we spent literally hundreds of hours pressurized in that suit as it evolved in this Franken suit over time, until at some point it was pretty damn good. And I've tried out components of the EMU suit that NASA used, which is been around for quite some time and expensive. And there are certainly areas, and as it should be with that much money, that are better than the suits we tested. And there's areas that our suits were better. So it was a really cool journey. At some point they locked in the design, and that's what you flew to space with. And but like when we came back, we saw already the new wrist rotators. So they're continuing that journey. Like when the first starships are landing on Mars, and it's maybe it's Optimus robots that get out first. But when humans step out of it, it's going to be a suit that evolved from the ones we tested, and that was cool.
Okay. No, that's great. So look, there's an unknown, or perhaps a little connection between entrepreneurship and flying. I used to work at a company called Ascend Communications, which was notoriously hardcore, and it seemed like everybody but me had their own plane and flew. Okay, because I'm like a homebody, and all that. But you're like a real adventurer, and I think people like me who don't fly and prefer to avoid roller coasters. I mean, how do you deal with doing these incredibly challenging and potentially dangerous things?
Well, I think, at least from my perspective, even though I tend to gravitate towards these kind of, exciting endeavors, I guess, they're all, calculated risks. I don't take needless risks. And it's all with the idea that the risk you are taking is worth it. That you are going to accomplish something, you're going to move the needle, and then we're going to be able to learn from that and build on it going forward. I certainly know, every NASA astronaut who shows up for work, does so knowing that there is a chance that things don't always go right, but what we stand to learn, discover, find out, is worth that risk. In fact, I think even something it's not limited to NASA by any means. I think it's actually almost a nationwide cultural issue that we've let our risk tolerance probably go too far in the wrong direction. That there is probably some recalibration that's needed, because if you are going to try and explore the worlds beyond our own, that is a risk that's worth taking.
Indeed it is. So 2 more questions. So, and you may not be able to answer this, but the question was approved, so I'm going to ask it, which is, can you tell the audience anything about future Polaris missions?
Other than that, I happen to be enjoying this first period of time since I was 16, and really not having much in the way of any professional obligations, which is really nice. And using the time over the summer to spend some catch-up time with family that's very, very needed. I put in my kind of note as things took their direction over the last couple of weeks that I don't think I've flown my last mission, but I'm not necessarily sure exactly what form that may take. So we'll have to see.
Let's see. Okay, one more question. Do you have any message that you would like to leave the audience with? Your microphone.
Yeah. Well, we're all big space fans here in this room, so I'm sure over the last couple months you've kind of bear witness to some of the more more turbulent times, right? I mean, I think the potential budget cuts have caught a lot of people, gotten people pretty upset, rightfully, that with all the spending that we have going on in the country and all the problems, why are we picking necessarily this to be the battleground? What I just say is, when you look past that, right? I mean, every 4 years there's new administrations, new cuts. There's a lot of political leadership. If you saw my hearing, that is very passionate about NASA and science and space exploration. Like, we will actually press on from it. And when you zoom out a little bit from this turbulence, you're going to see this is the best time in human spaceflight since probably the first chapter in the 1960s. We were doing some pretty extraordinary things. I mean, whatever the budget dollars will or won't be, look, it's not going to be any less than $20 billion in 1 year that the U.S. government's going to commit to science and discovery in space. You have the wealthiest people, the two wealthiest people in the world, that are happy to commit their resources on enabling capabilities for space to be experienced by the many, for us to go beyond the boundaries of our planet and continue this extraordinary endeavor. Not to mention all the other private companies and public companies that are out there that are applying their resources to it. I think that, again, if you zoom out from some of the momentary turbulence that we are going through right now, this is absolutely the most extraordinary time in human spaceflight. Like, this great adventure is really just getting started.
Okay. I'd just like to close by saying that the National Space Society was a strong supporter of your nomination. We look forward to supporting you as you continue your journey into space in the future. Anything you need from us, just ask. Congratulations.
Thank you.